And so for me, that was my pivotal moment with the microbes or beneficial bacteria or probiotics, whatever term you want to use. Because I'm thinking, well, I'm a sack of cells. So if it can do that for that, I'm in. I'm all in. Canada is all about new beginnings. And so way before I had the accident, I got introduced to beneficial bacteria. And I, of course, knew nothing about beneficial bacteria, but I was looking for something to fix my pit toilet dilemma, because climbing down there and shoveling the stuff into a 5-gallon bucket and lifting it up over my head every spring was not how I wanted to spend my time. And so I was trying every single gadget there was. And then one day I was on the ferry and I was eavesdropping. And these two gentlemen were talking about this stuff that they put into a lake and they aerated it. And then within a year, they removed 18 inches of sludge off the bottom of that lake. And then the trout could live there again. And so all I really heard was sludge remove. Like those were the two words. And I pretty near broke my neck getting over the two seats in the ferry so I could sit down where they were and say, so what is this stuff and how do I get it? And so back then it was a company called Back to Pure, and the product that I started with was XLG. And so I took it, did what they told me to do with it, packed it out to the campsites, and I put it in the toilet, stirred it all up. And the next day when I went out to the campsites, they were all gurgling like cauldrons. And all I could think of is, oh no, what have I done? Anyhow, the pump trucks came and they pumped it out, and that was the first time in all those years I'd been doing this job that you could see the bottoms of the pit toilets. And I was like, holy, does this ever work? So then, me being a curious George, well, that means, oh, well, if it works for this, what about this? Or what about that? So then I'm designing all these little receptacles that you can put your doggy doo in. And then all the people that are telling me they have to dig up their septics because their septic fields are blocked. I'm going, no, let me try this first, And so I discovered this stuff was pretty amazing. And wow, it could do anything that I tried to get it to do. I even put it in a holding tank in an RV and then emptied the whole contents out in my lawn. And it's like, wow. I still had no idea about bacteria. All I knew was that it worked. And then after a little while, I started thinking, everything I know that works is pretty toxic. I wonder if this stuff is safe. I wonder if this stuff's really as good as they say. So then I thought, oh, okay. And so I got myself an aquarium and I set it all up with goldfish. And I started adding the stuff and, oh, okay, they loved it. They grew, they were happy. So then I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll buy guppies. They're a little bit more sensitive than the goldfish. Well, I couldn't kill the guppies either. So then I went to angelfish. I couldn't kill the angelfish either. And I thought, wow, this stuff's pretty amazing. And so the whole time with the aquariums, I used to empty part of my aquarium out and pour it down the sink. Well, then I thought, well, I'm going to water my plants with it. Well, the plants just went crazy. They grew and they produced. And I was like, holy, maybe I better start learning about this stuff, because what I'm seeing is so amazing. But I know nothing about it. And so then I started on the journey about learning about microbes. And so here I am 30-some odd years later, and I am still amazed. And so to go back to where I was, so after I'm getting to see what it can do for my plants, the aquarium water is crystal clear, the fish love it, I'm thinking, well, I want some of that. I want to take some of this. So I tried drinking the aquarium water, and well, I'm threading a needle at 40 paces. It's way too potent for my digestive system. And so I kept thinking, well, there has to be a way, because if this works like this, I want it for me, right? And so through my searching, I found a company in Denmark, that had a product called Biosa, and it was for people. And at the time, it was illegal in Canada, and so then I had to wait a while. Then it was in the United States, so then I found a way to get it across the border to me. And when I did that, then I started my experiments, because I wasn't going to take it first, because of course I don't know anything about this company now, right? So I got to test it on my animal. So I gave it to my dogs, and my dogs did really well on it. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll do my chickens. And so I started the chickens on it, and I raised meat birds at that time. And I've always raised 100 birds at one time. So I know they'll go through 50 bags of feed, and then we're going to have roughly 220 gallons of water drank. And at the end of the 8 weeks, my 100 birds, 60% will weigh around 5 pounds or 5.5 pounds, and the rest will be above that. And so I start giving 1 tablespoon in every 5 gallons of drinking water. And 8 weeks comes, and I have 7, 8 bags of feed left. And I'm like, okay, how can this be? So I'm taking them to market, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I might not do so well on this batch of birds. I drop them off, I pick them back up, and I'm calculating on the drive home with all the birds, and my weight ratio has reversed. So I now have 60% that are 6 pounds or heavier, and the 40% are the lighter birds. And I'm like, how can this be? And so I get them all the way home. I'm dropping them off to the different people that ordered the birds, and I get home and I decide, well, I'm going to cut one of mine up. So I'm cutting it up, and there's no odor. It doesn't smell like chicken. I can't smell anything. So I cut off a drumstick, and I'm running over to the neighbors and stuffing the drumstick under their noses and say, can you smell anything? And they're like, no, looking at me like I'm some sort of retard. But anyhow, I go home, and I cut the breast off, skin it, throw it in a plastic tray, throw it in the fridge. I shake and bake the rest. So 45 minutes later, I pull it out of the oven, and there's no oil in the pan. So I'm like, well, I've never experienced it. I have no words, right? So all I can think of, I'm going to be buying back a lot of birds. Yep, this was kind of a stupid experiment. Anyhow, bite into the chicken, and everybody at the table is like, best chicken you've ever raised. And I'm like thinking, yeah, it tastes pretty good. So I phone all my customers, and I go, keep one bird out. I'm not going to tell you anymore, but cook it. I want feedback. And so over the course of a week, everybody was phoning back and saying, don't know what you did, girl. Best birds ever. And I'm like, oh, wow. And so now I'm fiddling around with the breast meat that's in my fridge. And I'm waiting for it to get slimy, and I'm waiting for it to stink. And so now I'm busy dealing with the breast meat that I have in the fridge. And so I'm pulling it out every day, and I'm looking at it. It's not getting slimy, there's no odor, there's no liquid, there's nothing. And so on day 19, I cooked it and I ate it. And so then I'm phoning Niels Wandler, who owns Biosa Inc., and I'm going like, okay, I just see what happened, but I really don't understand it at all. And he says to me, well, do you know what a cell is? And yeah, I know what a cell is. He says, well, that cell is filled with the liquid, and because you fed the bird the beneficial probiotics, that means that liquid is filled with the probiotics. And so because all those cells are in the meat tissue, and that means the cells are eating off the meat tissue. And so they're quite happy. Everything's kosher, none of them are dying. So he says, all the meat that you buy in the grocery store, that's why it has a smell. And that's why they put the absorbent pad, because the cells are dying. And so decomp is already starting to happen. And so basically you're buying meat that's already been decomposing for 3 days or whatever. And so he says that's why the chicken has no odor, and that's why that breast is fine in the fridge. And so I'm like, holy, well, like, and so for me, that was my pivotal moment with the microbes or beneficial bacteria or probiotics, whatever term you want to use. Because I'm thinking, well, I'm a sack of cells. So if you can do that for that, I'm in. I'm all in, because, you know, I was just stunned. So I've been taking it ever since. Because I was really, really curious, then I started thinking, okay, well, if it preserves the meat like this, if I can use that word preserves, but you know, it doesn't really, it's a fact about the health of the tissue. What could it do for lettuce? Because at the time, you bring home lettuce from the grocery store, leaf lettuce, and you know, 3 days later, it's all black and slimy in your refrigerator and you're throwing it out. So I'm thinking, okay, so how can I use this for that? So I started bringing the leaf lettuce home, and I would rinse it in water, like keep it in the leaf form, rinse it in water that I had Biosa in, and then I would mist the bottom that they actually cut off from the earth with the Biosa, and I'd put it back in the fridge. And I managed to keep that fresh as anything for over 2 weeks. And so I was like, wow, how come we're not educated about this stuff? That's all I could think is, how come I forget how old I was, but how come I never knew anything about this? How come no one taught me about this? How come this isn't commonplace knowledge? Why am I just finding out about this now? And why am I the weirdo? Because I'm running around telling people about this. And so I had that whole kind of challenge. And so while I was going through that challenge, I thought, okay, so I just saw a great big kaboom with my chickens and the lettuce. So that means when I start taking it, I should just have my socks knocked off, because this should just do something amazing for me. And so that's what I was waiting for. And it didn't happen. And I was so disappointed, so disappointed. And so I ran to all my friends, and I'm glad they're still my friends, because the things I had them doing. So I said, okay, you all got to go on Biosa, and I picked my friends that were totally different than me. So they ate different, their lifestyles were different, everything was different. And I'm so appreciative that they stuck with it, and they did my experiment, because 2 years later, amazing things happened for all of us. Now, they, of course, had stuff happen right at the very beginning that they noticed right off the get-go. I didn't. But because they were noticing it, that made me feel a little bit better. And so at the end of 2 years, we all dropped, within a 30-day period, we all dropped 20 pounds. All of us thought we must have cancer, because since when does your weight just start falling off for no reason? And so that tells me that's how long it took to undo the damage and the accumulation of junk and garbage that was in our bodies. Now, for all of us, that 20 pounds never came back. And we never really changed much, you know, about how we live and how we interact with the world. I still do the same, and they still do their way. And so that was pretty powerful and amazing. And somewhere in there, it got pointed out to me that I should quit complaining, because I'm no longer reading at night. I lay down in bed and I go right to sleep. And then when I thought about it, that's right. I don't even pick my book up. And I used to read sometimes for an hour in bed, trying to get myself unwound and ready for sleep. And I'm sleeping all the way through the night. And then when the hot flashes hit, I started taking the Biosa at night. And then that got a 50 or a 60% improvement in my night sweats. So it was like, holy. And so my whole journey with microbes, beneficial bacteria, Biosa, back to pure, has been amazing, and it continues to be amazing, and I'm always learning what they can do, and there seems to be no shortage of things that they can do. And so for the last 15 years or so, I've really focused about living my life so that I can improve the health and the longevity of the microbes that are in my own microbiome and externally around me, because I now know they are responsible for health, and without them, there is no health. In fact, there's no life. And so the current way of existing is germaphobe, and we're all about destroying. And so now that I know what I know, if we want health, we have to learn how to improve our microbiome. We have to learn how to live with these guys. We have to learn how to turn them into powerhouses for us. And we have to just totally fall in love with what they bring to the table, because without them, we're nothing. So thank you so much for watching. If you're thirsty for more knowledge, check out my blog at bricanafarm.ca, where I delve deeper into the wonderful world of beneficial bacteria. And if you want to build a better partnership with your horse, or you know someone who wants a strong, cohesive relationship with their horse, register for my live online Partner Up workshop. And don't forget to follow me on social media to stay up to date